This podcast is made possible by Avalara and Ledge.
Hi, this is Alka Tandon, CFO of Gainsight, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 988.
The first priority is this journey to profitability. Fiscal 25, which starts for us in September, will be an important next step down that path and continuing to increase the financial acumen of the organization. The second is to make sure that the people on my finance team continue to have what I would call from my General Mills days as career best experiences. It's where you're leveraging a talent, you're passionate about something, you're meeting the needs of the organization. And then the third is just to continue to listen and develop within the organization, understand where I, as the CFO, can add value, not only within the finance part of the company, but within our commercial organization, our manufacturing organization, our corporate functions like HR and legal. Basically, however I can benefit the organization will be where I will focus my efforts on the next 12 months and beyond.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Bob Houghton, CFO of Pivot Bio. In the heart of a bustling paper mill, where the aroma of fresh pulp once intermingled with the hum of machinery, Bob Houghton kicked off his finance career. Fresh out of college and a number of states removed from his Minnesota roots, Houghton understood the intricate dance of departments, working in unison to produce everyday paper essentials. It was here, in the domain of plus-size machines, that Houghton embraced the value of stepping beyond comfort zones for growth. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses, and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
Hello, we're speaking to Bob Houghton, CFO of Pivot Bio. Bob, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. It's great to be here.
Bob, we're going to ask you to take a look back in time for us, become a time traveler, try to identify those experiences you feel help prepare you to be a finance leader that you are today. When you look back in time, what comes to mind?
Yeah, Jack, I'm actually going to go back to my very first job out of college, and it was with a company called International Paper, and I was actually working at a manufacturing location. And Jack, what I learned in that very first experience was how important it was for various processes to come together to make something happen. And in the case of International Paper, it was the pulp, the power, the machines, the finishing, the shipping, all the different departments that come together to make something that seems as benign as a orange juice carton or a milk carton or a magazine paper. So that was a learning I had very, very early in my career. Jack, the second piece of learning I got from that was it really taught me the power of getting outside your comfort zone. I had grown up in Minnesota. I left friends and family in Minnesota, moved to a small town in Arkansas to take that job. So I really saw the power of getting outside your comfort zone to grow and develop.
Were you in the finance realm at the time, or did they have you in some other part of the business?
I was in a finance rotation program. So in my 2.5 years at the paper mill, I had 3 different jobs, but it was in the finance organization.
And you knew that coming out of college, it was going to be finance, not necessarily accounting, finance.
I did. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a good sense for what finance in a company looked like. When you're in college, you get a fairly clear picture of what accounting looks like, or consulting, or investment banking. But a lot of colleges don't really go into depth on what a career in corporate finance is like. So I admittedly probably didn't know what I didn't know when I went into the job, but I really enjoyed the experience. So that's the first job. I'm going to fast forward to my time with General Mills. And General Mills is a great company where they rotate you through various assignments throughout your career. I spent 15 years of my career at General Mills. I did 9 different jobs in those 15 years. The one that really comes to mind for me is when I was the director of investor relations. And I had just returned from a 3-year assignment in Canada. My family and I lived in Toronto. And investor relations wasn't an area I candidly was very focused on. But what I loved about that experience, Jack, was it gave me the chance to first represent the company externally with investors in our company. It also gave me the chance to really influence investors on why General Mills was a great investment. In return, what I got from those conversations, investors would then influence myself and members of the management team on what metrics were most important from an investor point of view. So it was a really great two-way exchange of information and influence. So that was my first foray into investor relations. I've now been in investor relations directly at 5 different companies. And Jack, if I had to pick one job that I think has really unlocked my path to CFO, it was that very first IR job at General Mills.
Now, did you, along the way there at General Mills, did you get an MBA along the way? Is that what happened?
I did, yep. So General Mills really supported people going on to get their MBA. So I did it part-time at the University of Minnesota while I was working full-time. My wife and I had 2 very young daughters at the time, so that, very little free time back in those days, Jack. But it was a great experience to get that experience at getting my MBA as part of while working full time at General Mills.
That's a big number of different positions. 9 you mentioned, Taurus. Were they kind of evenly dispersed, or how does General Mills does that? Are you surprised sometimes? Maybe there were only 6-month stints in certain cases, and you were kind of taken off guard. What would you share with us?
Yeah, they were pretty much evenly spaced. So I would say at the analyst manager level, it was typically every 2 years. At the director level, it was about every 3 years, but pretty evenly spaced. I would say always in a job enough time to learn something and then also have time to give back to the organization before you moved on to that next role.
When you compare notes with your peers, again, that's quite an investment of years you made with General Mills. And we always enjoy trying to understand if there are certain cultural nuances that different organizations have. So when we're speaking to folks who might have been part of GE for a number of years, or IBM, we're trying to determine what sets their organization apart from the finance function, that is. What would you mention about General Mills and what perhaps sets it apart as far as developing its finance people?
Yeah, and Jack, this applies beyond finance to other functions as well. They place a tremendous amount of time and money and energy into developing their people. They have extremely robust talent development programs. I was part of a finance leadership development program during my time at General Mills, which I would very much put on par with GE and other world-class companies in terms of developing future leaders. So I feel very fortunate to have grown up in that environment. Mm-hmm. The fact that you moved from so many different jobs over the course of, in my case, a 15-year career, was also extremely developmental. As I think about giving advice to people earlier in their journey in a finance career, getting a broad set of experiences is super, super important to just developing you, frankly, not only into a better finance professional, but a well-rounded business leader. And again, very foundational to getting me into the CFO seat that I'm in today.
And again, after that many years of investment, when you do leave, what is it that you're looking for? What type of opportunity? What is the next position going to do for you?
Yeah, I think it gives you confidence that whatever you choose to do, like in my case, I went to a company called Valspar, and for the first time in my career, got to lead financial planning and analysis at the full global level, something I was really excited about. You go with confidence that you have that skill set. And what you also realize when you leave a company like General Mills is not every company is as sophisticated as an academy company, if you will, like General Mills is. So I frankly felt fortunate that I had all that learning that I could take, to subsequent organizations in my career.
When does the CFO begin to get on the CFO office begin to get on your radar? What happens exactly?
So if I think about all those experiences I had at General Mills, it gives you confidence that you can step into bigger and broader roles in the organization. No different than any other company, there's only going to be so many of those opportunities within a single organization. So what that did for me, Jack, is it gave me confidence. I went to Valspar and other organizations that I could step into those bigger roles and be successful. And certainly I was, fortunate to get roles that allowed me to not only leverage what I had done in the past, but also expand my scope of responsibility, whether that was stepping into a global FP&A role at Valspar and Sherwin-Williams, stepping into a treasurer and investor relations role at C.H. Robinson, stepping into a very broad finance leadership role at United Natural Foods, and then ultimately my first CFO position at Lifetime Group Holdings.
Was there a time, and I'm going to assume that recruiters were part of your world, perhaps, for some of these moves. Was there a time where you had a conversation with the recruiter and said, okay, I'm ready. bring me some prospects regarding, finance leadership roles, CFO roles. Did that happen, or was it more nuanced than that, perhaps?
Yeah, it's a little bit nuanced. It's a good question. What I would tell you is that what I found in my experience, and I have peers that have the same experience, so this is not necessarily unique to me, but when you get that well-rounded set of experiences, the examples I gave, recruiters are more likely to proactively seek out you for the roles that they have rather than having to reach out to recruiters and saying, hey, boy, I'd sure love to do a CFO role someday. I found in my case, and I've had peers who have had the same circumstance, where if you get that well-rounded background, you tend to receive a fair number of inbound calls to be CFO. That is what happened, when I went to Lifetime.
And it's more like the recruiter is telling you, you're ready. Let's do this. And they're trying to convince you to take.
That's right. And the amazing opportunity I'm sitting in now as CFO of Pivot Bio was also through a recruiter.
Well, this might be good timing then. We might have a few more career-related questions a little later for you during the mentoring round. But right now, let's find out about Pivot Bio. What does this company do, and what's it about?
Yeah. So, Jack, to understand Pivot Bio, let's go on a little journey of the role that nitrogen plays in feeding the world, because not everybody knows about that. So, for plants to grow and thrive, they really need three primary things. They need sunlight, they need water, and they need nitrogen. And nitrogen is by far the most abundant air in our atmosphere. It's about 80% of our atmosphere. And unfortunately, about 99% of nitrogen that occurs naturally in the air is not usable by the plants that we grow to feed the world. So about 100 years ago, a process called Haber-Bosch was invented to basically, through a very fossil fuel intensive, energy intensive process, extracts that nitrogen out of the atmosphere, converts it to ammonia that can then be fed to the plants as nitrogen. So over the last 100 years, about 50% of the world's population has been fed by this process. So said differently, synthetic fertilizer enables feeding of about 4 billion people on this planet. So it is an extremely significant technological breakthrough over the last 100 years. But basically, that's how we've fertilized the crops grown around the world for the last century. The challenge with synthetic fertilizer, however, is first of all, about 40 to 60% of the fertilizer that's applied never actually reaches the plant. It dissipates in one of two ways. One is that it volatilizes into the air, and the second is that it leaches into the groundwater. And when it leaches into the groundwater, it increases the level of nitrates in groundwater, which has all kinds of health issues, and it has created over 500 ecological dead zones in our oceans. So it's very, very damaging to the environment. What Pivot Bio has is a solution to those challenges. So let me tell you what Pivot Bio does. So what we've done, Jack, is in the soil, there are microbes that occur naturally. In fact, there are microbes that have existed in the soil for millions of years. What those microbes naturally do is when they detect nitrogen, they shut off. They're an efficient organism just like anything else. When they determine that the energy that they would have to expend to absorb that nitrogen is already present, they don't do that process. What we have done is we have edited the gene sequence of those microbes to continue to convert nitrogen to ammonia, even in the presence of nitrogen. So our microbes are always working even if there's nitrogen present. The second thing that we've done, Jack, is we've enhanced the output of those microbes by enabling them to produce more than they would naturally produce just to self-sustain, and that excess ammonia in the soil is absorbed by the root system of the plant. So we apply our product in two primary ways. The first way is that we apply it on seed. So a corn seed is treated with Pivot Bio product prior to being planted. The second way that we apply our product is through a liquid in furrow application. So as the grower is planting his or her seed, our product gets applied right at that time. So as soon as that seed germinates, our product adheres to the root system. So that has numerous benefits for the grower. The first thing is that it's 100% available to the plant. We don't lose any through volatilization. We don't lose any through leaching. It's 100% available to the plant. It spoon feeds the plant the amount of nutrients that it needs consistently throughout the growing season. And it's much, much less environmentally and energy intensive to produce. Synthetic nitrogen contributes about 2.5% to the global greenhouse gas emissions per year. It's the third leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions globally. Our product consumes basically 1/1000th of the energy and 1/1000th of the water to produce. So it's a much, much more environmentally friendly product to produce. It's also, as I mentioned, much more sustainable because it doesn't evaporate or leach off into the groundwater. Another thing, a benefit of our product, Jack, is we work with downstream partners. In this case, think CPG companies. General Mills could be an example of this, where they are trying to improve the sustainability of their supply chain. So we partner with companies like that. They buy inset credits from Pivot Bio. We, in turn, share that revenue with our growers that use our product to farm more sustainably. So that is an additional income source to the grower. So for growers that participate in Innovator, we can cover about 30% of their cost of nitrogen. That's something that no synthetic nitrogen manufacturer can provide. Only Pivot Bio can provide that benefit to the grower. So there's an ROI play for the grower as well. So if we think about the benefits that we provide the grower, we're a more profitable solution. We're a more predictable solution because we're always on the root system. We're safer to apply. Again, there's no additional process that the grower has to go through to use our product. And we're a much more sustainable solution. And Jack, maybe the last thing I'll leave you with in terms of talking about who we are, just to give you a sense of the scale of our product. If you filled up a 5-gallon pail with Pivot Bio microbes, that would replace an entire rail tanker car of ammonia and hydra synthetic fertilizer. So Jack, there's really 4 benefits that we provide to the grower. 1, we're more profitable. 2, we're more predictable since 100% of our product adheres to the root system of the plant and doesn't volatilize or leach. We're a safer application. There's no additional process required by the grower to apply our product. And the 4th is we're more sustainable for the reasons that we've talked about. And to help visualize our product relative to the synthetic offering, if you filled a 5-gallon pail with our microbes, that would replace a full rail tanker car of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer.
Nice overview. We'd love to understand better, though, the capital structure of this company. Could you give us maybe an abbreviated history of the company's capital structure?
Yep.
Take us back in time. Yeah.
Yep. So the company was founded in 2011. And in the 13 years we've been a company, we did a early seed round of funding. We've done 4 series. The Series D, which was completed in 2021, raised $430 million. So the company has very significant investors. We've been fortunate to receive some amazing accolades. Last year, we were a CNBC Disruptor 50 company. We've been on Time Magazine's 200 most sustainable inventions, and that funding and that recognition has enabled us to grow from our first year of commercial product was 2019. We were on 300,000 acres in the United States. In 2019, we were on 5 million acres last year. So an unprecedented rate of growth for a company in our space. So that's a little bit about our cap structure and our recent growth.
But just to clarify for us, who owns the company? Is it private equity or something other?
Our owners are venture capital firms, are the owners of our company. We do not have any private equity funding, but yes, we are still privately held.
And are you? And they have a CFO now that has some investor relations backgrounds, and is there aspirations to have this company go public in the next few years, or what would you?
Yeah, Jack, I'd hesitate to speculate on specifically anything around an IPO, but I'll tell you what we are focused on, and that's really around. We have like I said, once in 100-year technology. We're helping our growers farm more sustainably. Now the focus for the company is path to profitability and making sure that we've got a healthy, sustainable business model to go along with our sustainable grower practices and our amazing technology.
So again, you sort of just stepped into the office. We understand, but and you're in that first. Is it still the first 100 days? Sure, it is.
Yep.
So I imagine you picked up a number of those books that are out there for how to board the moving train, I suppose.
Sure.
But what would you tell us about, as you arrive? What are your priorities? And I get to ask you this question at the very end, so I don't want to steal the thunder there. But as you step in, what are some of the first parts of the business you wanted to become acquainted with, get on top of? How would you like to put it?
Yeah, and you're right. Absolutely, I've read What to Do in Your First 90 Days and a few other books like that. Early days, Jack. Just a lot of listening, right? I have 15 years of experience with General Mills and another 2.5 years with United Natural Foods. So about 2/3 of my career is in food, but this is the first foray into ag. So really, really listening from people who've been in the industry, for multi-decades and learning about, what's important to our growers, what's important to our commercial organization, how we can be successfully from a manufacturing and logistics standpoint. So first is a lot of listening. Two is a point I touched on a few minutes ago, is really about helping the organization get to profitability and increasing the financial acumen across the organization. So along with Chris Abbott, our CEO, and other members of the leadership team, been really focused on talking about concepts like contribution margin. Anytime we have an employee town hall, really talking about the levers that will get us to that healthy, sustainable business model. Along with work done with my team, we're developing a financial acumen series. A couple of leaders on my team led a Finance 101 course about 3 weeks ago that was extremely well received, talking about concept of how the three financial statements tie together, how investors value a company, how different people in the organization have an impact on the financial outcome of the company. So really trying to dial up that financial acumen. In terms of profitability, Jack, there's a lot of different levers that we're looking at there. One is just making sure that we have a crystal clear value prop that we take to our growers. We've had a number of independent studies done, the most recent done by the University of Kentucky just last week, that shows that growers can see a yield improvement by using our product. The University of Kentucky study showed that growers on average see 11 bushel per acre yield improvement versus their normal synthetic fertilizer treatment by using Pivot Bio. Those are super powerful, really helpful validations of our technology. Making sure that all the elements that we talked about earlier, right? The innovator program, the fact that 100% of our product stays adhered to the root, the fact that we've got this yield, this opportunity to increase yield, all these different components, giving that a crystal clear value prop to the grower. So very, very focused on that. Also very focused.
We're always looking for a business dynamic or something that you've tried to make the organization more aware of. And it might be just part of the organization, like the sales team. How do we get the sales team to pay attention to this? Or how do we make the marketing folks start avoiding doing this, by making a number more visible, perhaps? Is that part of your approach?
Yeah, Jack, there's absolutely making sure we're being appropriately visible about the financial results. And in terms of the levers, it's a couple things. One, it's crystal clear articulation of the value prop to growers. What are the levers we're going to pull to grow revenue? So the second is around capital allocation, making sure that we're applying an ROI lens to our spending. We have lots of great ideas in the company. It's just being sure that we understand what the return is we're going to get on those investments. That's another discipline that I'm bringing. And then the third is just to help the organization understand what levers do we need to pull to get us to be profitable.
Do you have a fix on that?
Yeah, I do. It's, each organization internalizes it differently, right? So it's helping a salesperson migrate from just being focused on growing acres to being focused on profitably growing acres and helping them understand the value of an incremental acre. We have fixed costs in our business just like any other business, So the power of that incremental acre is it's a much more profitable acre than kind of an acre that is having to absorb fixed costs. So that's a concept as one example.
Want to touch on AI with you. Are you adopting these types of technologies into your operations? Where? What role would AI have with this company?
Yeah, I think the best example of AI and machine learning is we use it to assess how our microbes will perform under varying conditions is the best example. I have not used AI to this point within my function. I think it's an area, it's a discipline that will permeate every function of the organization at some point in time. But it's the microbe performance is the best example of where we're using it today.
All right. Well, we're going to jump to our finance strategic moment question, where we just ask you to share one story from your past that a moment of insight allowed you to see an opportunity, avoid a risk. Could be anything. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah. So Jack, finance strategic moment for me, there's one that's very clear, and we'll go back to my days at General Mills, and I had just moved into a division within General Mills it was the biggest division in the company, and the most profitable. And I'd made the assumption that everything would be working perfectly smooth, and there wouldn't be a lot of opportunity to have impact. And what I found when I came into that role was that there wasn't enough conversation about the specific steps that would need to be executed to enable the vision for the division. So when I got to the division, the strategies were things like grow volume and increase margin. And from my perspective, Jack, those are outcomes. Those aren't strategies. You do things to enable those outcomes. So what I observed was that the division just wasn't executing very well. So I went online. I said, I'd love to find a book on execution. So I keyed in the word execution, and not surprisingly, Execution, The Discipline of Getting Things Done by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan is the first book that showed up. And that book does a fantastic job of talking about how mission and vision statements aren't enough, that you need to have strategies and very, very specific action plans that enable the strategies, that enable the mission and vision. You need all of those components to be successful. And it absolutely resonated and struck a chord with me. And it was what the division was lacking. So I put together a 2-day offsite with the finance organization. We went through all the concepts of what was in that book, how we would apply them to help that division become more profitable, more successful. So we did 1 day offsite, and we did 1 day applying those learnings back within the organization. And between that and some other initiatives that were underway in the 2 years I was in that role, we were able to increase the profitability of that division by $100 million in 2 years and gain a full point of market share in a very, very competitive category.
You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co. That's ledge.co to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift. We're going to jump to our mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. I'm going to change this first question, which is only because you just arrived in the CFO office, really. So it's kind of a it just doesn't work as well. The question I'd like to ask you is, as you look back, again, a 15-year investment, and I do this every time to anybody with an investment of years like that in a marquee company, no question, great training and development along the way. Would you have invested as many years? Looking back, would you might have departed and looked for opportunities to grow, advance quicker?
I think it'd be really easy to look back at that career and say, boy, if I left 5 years earlier, would my path have been faster or different? And as I reflect on that, Jack, the second to last role I had at General Mills, so I guess in years 12, 13, and 14 with the company, was that job in investor relations. And as I said, I do believe that that was the single most important role I had at that company in terms of setting me up for future success. So looking back on it, I wouldn't have done it differently. I feel very fortunate that I had the experiences I had after I left General Mills. I feel very fortunate that I'm here as the CFO of Pivot Bio. So I would not have done things differently, and frankly feel very fortunate that I've been able to have so many different roles over the course of my career.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side, Bob. We're wondering if there's something you do that perhaps your colleagues just aren't aware of. Is something about you, something you do outside of work, something most people might not know about you?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple things. One, the one that I think is most surprising for people to know is that I've been a drummer for most of my life. I've been a drummer for over 40 years. I played in a band in my early 20s. That's certainly something that's unique. I'm also extremely active in looking to try new things. I took up both pickleball and wake surfing after I turned 50. So those are things that maybe not everybody knows about me.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for those. We're going to jump to our book selection. Wondering if you have a book you'd like to recommend, or it doesn't have to be a business book. It could be something you escape with. Anything?
Yeah, I admittedly have already revealed that my two favorite business books, which are Execution, The Discipline of Getting Things Done, and Now Discover Your Strengths. Two of my, I read both of those books many years ago, and to this day, they are my two favorite business books. I think it's important to have a balance of fiction and nonfiction. From a nonfiction perspective, from not business related, was a book called Midlife Cyclist. I'm an avid cyclist. That's my primary form of fitness. My wife had recommended that book, and that's a great book in terms of not only the physical aspects of riding a bike, but the mental aspects of fitness as we age. So I think that was a really, really powerful book. I'm certainly reading books on agriculture to learn the industry more. That might not be a recommendation for everybody, but I found it to be very, very interesting. In terms of fiction, a wide variety of genres I think are good. I do think it's healthy that people have a balance of fiction and nonfiction as they continue to learn and grow.
I'm wondering if I can ask one more. I'm just always curious about geography. I know you lived in Toronto for a while. You went back to Minneapolis. Minneapolis remains home?
It is, yeah. So I grew up in the Twin Cities. It's been home for most of my life. My family and I have a home in Austin, Texas as well. So we do spend time in both locations. But yeah, Minneapolis has been home for the majority of my life.
Okay, we're up to our final question. We'll ask you to look forward finally. And we have a few clues as to what these might be. But over the next 12 months, what are your priorities as CFO of Pivot Bio?
The first priority is this journey to profitability. Fiscal 25, which starts for us in September, will be an important next step down that path and continuing to increase the financial acumen of the organization. The second is to make sure that the people on my finance team continue to have what I would call from my General Mills days as career best experiences. It's where you're leveraging a talent, you're passionate about something, you're meeting the needs of the organization. And then the third is just to continue to listen and develop within the organization, understand where I, as the CFO, can add value, not only within the finance part of the company, but within our commercial organization, our manufacturing organization, our corporate functions like HR and legal. Basically, however I can benefit the organization will be where I will focus my efforts on the next 12 months and beyond.
Bob Houghton, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOThoughtLeader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.